And we are closing it out with this review of The Demon Redcoat by C.C. Finley. How was it? Was it good? It was pretty good. I liked it. It was very wholesome. This one jumps ahead about 2 years after the events of the last book, and we are now expecting a baby between Proctor and Deborah. They got married, and they've got a wee one on the way. They've had some trouble with that. The main movements of 1776 and that offense and all that is over. Now begins the diplomatic mission, and Proctor gets a call to shadow John Adams and Ben Franklin on their mission to solicit help from the French government. I remember reading about this in the McCullough biography of John Adams, how Adams ended up kind of having to land in Spain and didn't want to wait, wanted to get underway, so they went overland into France, and it was just a massive undertaking. It was kind of cool to see Proctor figuring out like how to do all that and how to pass as a gentleman abroad, and he also took one of the other witches, casters, magicians, whatever, with him. Her name is Lydia. She was a black woman, which created a different level of difficulty as you had to navigate the whole social expectation of like, oh, you've got a slave with you, I'll rent her from you. And he's like, no, she's not for rent or whatever. Like there were certain normal customs that people had with that, and he had to come up with excuses that wouldn't blow his cover, but that would also protect her in that unique environment. It was like, okay, cool. Like kudos to this historical writer for not shying away from that or just like hand waving it away and be like, oh yeah, and then here's this reason why they never had to deal with this. Like it became something that affected the story and affected their movements. As for the eponymous Demon Redcoat, one of Proctor's particular magical gifts is scrying, like seeing things in the future. He occasionally gets visions that trouble him, and when he has this daughter, they have a baby girl. This demon like tries to latch onto her and affect the family as part of this larger campaign by evil demons and their mortal agents to defeat the rebellion. Why are these demons so interested in that? Why is this evil covenant of witches? They call themselves the Covenant. It's not. I understand like a group of witches is supposed to be a coven, but the group is called the Covenant. What is their interest? Well, it goes back to that thing that was touched on in the last book about like what people believe in and adhere to and worship, and how there's like magic and power in that. And the British Empire is still very, very large at this time. And so the plan is to really make them into a worldwide empire so that all of their worship and adoration and everything is focused on one figurehead, and then like the Covenant can commandeer that and use that for spiritual subjugation of people. But the rebellion threatens that. It weakens the worldwide monarchy. And so that's why the demons are interested in it, and that's why the good witches have to go out and do their thing to thwart them. Proctor and Lydia get separated, and for not a good stretch of the book, but a good stretch of time, like Proctor actually gets captured and locked up in the Tower of London, and he's a prisoner for almost a year. And this was an achievement by Finley, being able to write this part without it just dragging on and being boring and exhausting to read. I remember one of the books in the Temeraire series by Naomi Novik, and that's a series that I really should recap, because the first three were awesome. The fourth had a sucker punch ending, and then they just kind of tapered off after that. But the sixth book in the series, it's a bit of a globe-trotting series. It's set in the Napoleonic Wars. And they end up in Australia. And, like, seriously, by the numbers, if that book is 300 pages long, 200 pages of it is them just walking around in the outback looking at sand, where, like, very little of any significance happens. And then like they get to the end of the book, it's like, okay, like now we're actually finding out what the Chinese are up to on the North Shores of Australia, and so on and so forth. Like it was just exhausting. It was so boring. And my friend Porter warned me about it, and I read it and I was like, geez, Porter was right. Like I understand that you've got to do something to really portray like the length of a slog to the reader. And being in prison for 8 months would be a slog, but like I gathered that. But if one day is really not all that different from the next, you don't have to show me every single one of these days in a row, all 240 of them or whatever, to convey that. And he did that well. Like he did that with an adept hand. And then, of course, like once Proctor is able to get out through some cunning craftsmanship, he's got to like get back home. He's been gone for a couple of years now. Like, can you imagine that time? It's like, oh yeah, I've got to go do this job. I just had a kid. I guess I'll see her when she's like 2 years old. Jeez, intense. But I won't spoil the ending. It was good and wholesome. And I like that, here we've got a hero who's trying to be a good man and do the right thing, be a family man. He marries this woman, and they're having kids, and they're working together as husband and wife should. But at the same time, like I've read plenty of books like that where it's just like it's overly heavy-handed with like the author's own faith or whatever. It's like I couldn't tell you anything about C.C. Finley's faith, or even if he has some. He's just writing characters in a setting that he's familiar with on a factual basis. He's like, well, they would be religious and they would do this and that. And it's like, cool. I mean, the dude could be like a Trotskyite rainbow flag communist or whatever. Like I wouldn't be able to tell because he's writing a good book and like doing things in service of what the story needs. It kind of reminds me of Neil Shusterman writing the Unwind series before Trump broke his brain and he ruined the Scythe books, but I digress. Anyway, a hearty endorsement. I will eventually get these in paperback, and this is a great piece of historical fiction. I really wish that I'd given it more of a look back in 2011, but I think it just says more about what my tastes were in reading, and that I hadn't really come to enjoy more weight in the fiction that I was reading at that time. I liked things to be light and to be surface level, but I'll close by saying this. Louis L'Amour, who was a massive advocate for reading, he said this in his autobiography. He goes, he just encourages everybody to read. And he goes, and it doesn't matter at first what you read, only that you read. Because like you won't gain a love for reading by having people beat you over the head and say, you have to read this, this is a great book. You need to read what you like. And that is how you will gain a love for reading, and that will be the gateway to you enjoying things that are way outside of your wheelhouse now. I used to make fun of my brother for reading books on the history of salt, but I've come around to reading a lot of otherwise dry and boring non-fictions, and I'm grateful that I've kind of had that gateway opened up to me, because it's brought me to some really uplifting and enlightening reads. And this is one of them. I just have kind of the context to appreciate a book like this that I might not have had back then. So go check out the Traitor to the Crown series by C.C. Finley, and I'll go ahead and post this tonight, so we'll end up having 2 of these videos on the same day. And you guys all have a great 4th of July. God bless America. See you out there.